Not all languages are equally powerful, and our language policy seems to ignore that. And so for us, given the hegemony of English, the choice that our policy offers is a chimera. It's a false choice. In fact, the choice is made already. We have very little room for maneuver. And that's why we're talking about translanguaging. We are maneuvering. We are maneuvering.
My name is Professor Angela Crease, and I work in a research collaboration with the University of Birmingham and the University of Cape Town. We're working with universities across South Africa to examine how a translanguaging pedagogy can increase access to and success in higher education for currently disenfranchised students in South African universities.
Translanguaging, it was a pedagogical strategy for teaching, balancing two languages. It was Welsh and English. When you come to the African context, the situation is far more complex than that. That majority of the kids in our townships, in our localities, they have 6, 7 languages before the age of 6. So we have got challenges with defining what is the mother tongue, what is first language, what is second language. All those concepts don't quite apply.
Translanguaging as pedagogy is when teachers and students make the best available use of the resources in their communicative repertoires. And we believe, and we have good evidence, that this offers a viable way forward for language policy in South African universities.
We have an English Plus, that's what it's called, an English Plus language policy, which means that officially the language of instruction is English, assessments are in English, but that multilingualism is encouraged as a resource for teaching and learning.
Really, in some contexts, the use of English in education can really be traumatic. It is the official language, the language that is used predominantly in the media, the language that is used in judiciary, almost everywhere. English is just all over. We breathe English, although we don't live it.
Because we're an English-dominant society, so English has a very high social status in terms of social capital. To actually get teachers to use home languages in a very productive educational way for learning is something that takes socialization.
Translanguaging is not a process of switching from one standardized code into another without reference to the previous languages. It means that you have to have a skill to use both languages, perhaps even in one sentence or one phrase, to make meaning.
Multilingualism used to be seen as a multiple monolingualism, but translanguaging helps us that instead of seeing language as separate, we see languages as fluid, language as mixed. So that view helps us that students are allowed to draw from different resources, linguistic resources which they have, instead of being confined to one particular language which is recognized as the medium of instruction.
Most of the students that get referred to me are African students. I thought of allowing them to use any language they feel okay with during the tutorials, and for me to use it with them to sort of build their confidence in the knowledge, and to actually just double check that they actually understand what the concepts are about. So I only learned years later that it's actually called translanguaging.
At the moment, I'm using translanguaging in my study, PhD study, with the literacy club that I have with the children who are 9-year-olds to 12-year-olds. So they read in Xhosa, they write in Xhosa, they're also in English. So we translanguage between the two languages, but we also recognize that within the languages there are varieties of the same language. So we also legitimizing not just the two languages in the space, but also the varieties that the children speak, like the urban varieties of both languages. And we work with all varieties for the children. We want to give them access to all.
If I don't understand something in English, I must be permitted in a translanguaging environment to ask in a language which I understand. Then if they explain in my own language, I will be able to express well my ideas in the language drawing from my stronger language.
Translanguaging, it maximizes the ability of multilingualism. And it also helps us to have an effective communication. It involves the issue of language production. It helps us to understand the function of language.
So, the children, for example, who are in Soweto, I'll refer to Soweto, for example, when they come to classroom, their ways of seeing the world, it's like they're three-dimensional. They connect with the world through more than one language. That's their way of knowing. Now, when they go to the classrooms, the teachers say, in my classroom, you'll only have one lens. And that is almost the direct opposite of their way of knowing. So the whole schooling system is based on a monolingual learner. Therefore, we are failing majority of the children in the schools because we want them to fit into monolingual spaces.
You are looking at the same situation, but you are looking at it from different orientation. One says there's a problem here, so we're going to do this to fix you. The other one says, well, there's a resource here. How do we draw on this resource to make things work better?
It seems as if translanguaging is only about communication. And maybe that is what is highlighted and not valorized enough. That it's the whole area of meaning making. No black person actually in this country or in Africa has got their degree without translanguaging. Yes. We've all gone through that. So yes. I'm concerned that we think that this is the new theory coming. It's not. We've been doing it forever.
For myself, I'm an isiXhosa first language speaker, but I went to a school where I had to learn English as a first language and Afrikaans as a second language, and then isiXhosa as an additional language to all of that. It's always been something that's been there, and for me it would have made a huge difference if it would actually, it was something that was acknowledged and it was done whilst I was growing up.
Currently, in schools it is practically used, but it's not officially there. So I think in the curriculum, maybe the curriculum advisors, they need to add it in so that it can be practiced, and then educators and also learners can use it freely. So
I want my students to be as successful as they possibly can be, and I believe that the way to achieve this is to enable them to learn through the resources in which they are the most confident, in which they feel that they can succeed. And I'm not going to ask them to leave those resources at their school gate, as we traditionally do, but we're going to ask them to bring them into the classroom. I think we need to institutionalize that permission for students to use the languages in which they are most successful.
If I start from my own experience, in terms of my worldview, the languages I speak, and make sense of what is new to me linguistically and in worldview, it makes meaning better for me. So I'm able to make sense of what I know, and I have been able to make sense of what I don't know using the resources that I have, linguistic resources that I have, sociocultural resources that I have. It is the only way I know where students can learn successful in a South African classroom.
I'm very passionate about creating an open, engaging learning environment, and I don't see how that can happen in South Africa without a multilingual awareness, without teachers acknowledging learners' multilingual resources. And we're operating in a very constrained English-dominant environment, and so we're very eager to connect with other people who are researching and teaching in the field.
From an educational perspective, it's a responsible thing to do because our focus should be on learning. So how do you enhance it? How do you make it happen? And translanguaging is one resource that you can use to make sure that learning, high quality learning happens.
I think, to me, it's a call. You know, what is happening across universities, a call for decolonization. I think, you know, we then begin to decolonize the way we see language, to question the concept of standard. What is language, in fact? What is standard language? What is home language? What is mother tongue? You know, I mean, we should not just take those things as a given. So, and I think translanguaging opens a space for us to begin to question some of those concepts that we've been working with.
Translanguaging is the future, and because it is a reflection of the true societies and their ways of being, their ways of communicating. It is in the public space, it is in the social media, it is in people's heads. Cognitively, people are juggling between several languages every day.
It offers a rich platform for people from diverse cultural groups and language groups and whatever group people come from to learn from one another. So for me, it can only make sense.